Hello, I'm the Angry Spork. Earlier this season, we looked at Dreamwave Productions' spin on mixing robots in disguise with real American heroes, set at the time of World War II. And, as happened with the series from Image and Devil's Due, there was a follow-up miniseries that lasted one issue. Founded by artist Pat Lee and his brother Roger, Dreamwave started out as an imprint of Image in 1996, acquired the Transformers license from Hasbro in late 2001, and split off on their own as a publisher a few months later in 2002. Unfortunately, after less than 3 years, the company closed down, citing the weak US dollar and a shrinking comic market. Looks like Dr. Doom was playing with his shrink ray again. And things were apparently messy. Some people who worked for the company were still owed money, yet somehow also contractually liable for Dreamwave's debts to FedEx for the cost of shipping unpublished and unpaid work to Canada, where the publisher was based. If things weren't awkward enough, the two people who wrote today's comic left over pay disputes about a month after it was published. So with those cherry details in mind, I'm taking issue with Transformers/G.I. Joe Divided Front. So let's see if this comic makes us wish it had continued, or happy it was stopped in its tracks. The cover is pretty cool. A squad of armed Joes standing in front of a tank, Duke clutching a loose American flag caught in the wind, with some Autobots barely seen in the background. Adding some almost humorous tragedy to how Dreamwave folded, this isn't the only cover. Oh, no. We also have Snake Eyes, Spirit, and Flint flexing victoriously in front of an Autobot flag, a 3-section wraparound using a lot of greens, featuring a bunch of Joes looking like they're inspecting a destroyed building alongside more clearly seen Jazz, Blaster, and Hound, who apparently has adopted the Earth TV trope of aiming your guns sideways. Well, he's a giant advanced mechanical lifeform from another planet. Maybe he has a subroutine that makes impractical weapon handling genuinely effective. Then 2 more wraparounds that actually kind of go together. One is the enemy forces, Cobra and the Decepticons, charging forward toward their heroic soldiers on the final and separate variant. Maybe Dreamwave was trying to shore up sales with the hope that enough people would buy 2 copies of the same issue just to complete the image. Written by James McDonough and Adam Patek, with art by the aforementioned Pat Lee, Rob Armstrong, Anthony Washington, and Alan Wong, we begin with a splash page featuring the classic intro from the G.I. Joe cartoon's opening theme. It's 1985, New York City, and Flint is rallying his troops. The pier they're on seems to be the center of illegal shipments by Cobra, according to Rumor Control. They also say Debbie in accounting didn't really go to Cabo over the weekend, Larry is cheating on his diet, and that Shauna totally has a crush on someone in the office. On the following 2-page spread, the Joes are already in action, weapons firing, helicopters exploding, and characters labeled with their function. Quick Kick, Silent Weapons, especially Wingassy. Snake Eyes, Commando.
Free and easy, Lise. There's nothing like an unfurnished basement for pure comfort. Huh?
Grand Slam, Artillery Soldier. He's not a baseball fan, oddly enough. He picked that name because he really likes eating at Denny's. The Joes have cut off Cobra's water route, and Destro, preferring his men to stay and fight, instructs Scrap Iron to retrieve the flight pods. Shipwreck appears, socking Destro and referencing a certain Fantastic Four villain. Of course, that was beryllium steel, so he did little more than hurt his hand. And it's a mask. Consider it something of a family tradition. Ah, cram it, ya highfalutin. Fortunately, Flint provides backup with a punch to the villain's breadbasket. I hope for your sake there's a steel-plated girdle under that supervillain get-up. Are you calling me fat? If you worked for Cobra, you'd stress-eat too. Flint helps the sailor up, making a crack that he should quit soldiering in favor of something less demanding, like joining the village people. How timely. And before Shipwreck can specify where on his own body Flint can pucker up, a strange noise precedes the introduction of the Trouble Bubbles. Corny name, but still pretty lethal, as the Cobra pilots start tearing the docks apart. What is this, an episode of The Twilight Zone? Consider, if you will, an organization so bent on conquering the world through violence and fear that they don't realize they could do it by making their advanced technology available for the public to purchase. Imagine where Cobra Commander got rich because little Susie got her very own weather dominator for Christmas. In a nearby warehouse, a Cobra goon tries taking the last bubble for himself, leaving Destro behind, but dutiful Scrap Iron clocks him, saying Metalhead can take it while he uses a water moccasin. However, Destro reminds him that the Drows have blocked that escape route, so with Scrappy clinging to the side, he takes off as Flint enters, firing a missile in his escape. And Flint's reflection makes it look like he's trying to order the explosive to get out of the way. 24 hours later, in the Joe base in Utah, he's debriefed by a superior officer that won't make eye contact with him, explaining how things were going pretty well until Destro revealed the wacky sci-fi tech. He apologizes, but is told that Nathaniel never apologized, he just got results, and Flint is subsequently dismissed to the pit for R&R until further notice. He'll have his tropical smoothie and play air hockey, but he's gonna look all sullen while doing it. In the middle of the night, near Mount St. Hilary, the fictional stand-in for Mount St. Helen, a spaceship has come out of subspace, with its stabilizers destroyed and its argumentative occupants unable to maintain control. The craft crashes, its signal picked up by operatives on Cobra Island, noting it's of much greater magnitude than previously recorded contact, suggesting a kind of power-up in the interim. So, should we assume that someone on board did a lot of push-ups and artificially enhanced gravity while doing a lot of guttural screaming? They inform Cobra Commander, who's pretty stoked at the news and orders extraction and retrieval as quickly as possible. Gotta say, he's looking pretty spry for someone apparently executed in the previous crossover. A park ranger station gets a call, saying the Air Force picked up an unidentified craft, possibly a small plane hitting nearby. So they want the Rangers team to check it out. A ranger responds that they're already on it, as we see his Cobra uniform nearby. Woodsy Owl warned Park Services there was something weird about this Ranger Smith fellow, but they just wouldn't listen. Starscream is flying over Cobra Island, watching the soldiers below scramble toward the energy signature. He's low on energon since reformatting to his sleeker jet form, but with his energy levels beneath their notice, they'll end up doing the work for him, and hopefully lead to a way off planet. Come on, give it a little time. It's 1985. In another year or so, Alf will premiere on TV, and maybe you'll think better about this place. Again, another surprisingly alive character. I could see him surviving that shot to the head, even if it was a serious vulnerability, but the destruction of the Matrix took out all the Cybertronians. Maybe they somehow worked in his mutant immortal spark. In Joe's HQ gym, Flint is lifting weights to Eye of the Tiger. Seriously. While Shipwreck acts as a spotter. But when the sailor tries getting to the root of why the commander has been screwing up lately, and even mentions Flint's old man, likely the aforementioned Nathaniel, it wears thin. So when his watch alarm sounds, he takes off. An hour later, he's on board an aircraft on the way to Oregon, with several more Joes, on a surprise mission with little intel. Also, I don't know why his dialogue bubble is aimed at Bazooka, who looks like he's staring down the barrel of his own like-named weapon. Highly trained special mission force, ladies and gentlemen. Their boss tells Flint, who then tells everyone else, but angrier and more insulting because of that chip on his shoulder, that they'll make contact with Spirit and his team of Joe trainees, get further details, and investigate the crash site. Flint expects things to get hairy, likely involving recon by fire.
The theme is a flaming horse's platoon.
Soon enough, the three trainees, Alpine, Barbecue, and Covergirl, are near the crash site when the latter pulls her gun on who she thinks is Cobra, but is actually Flint, who then criticizes her for ditty-bopping in the wilderness. Hey, some people have the music in their soul, and they just have to dance. Actually, it's a term for careless walking. Certainly sounds like it came from older than the 80s, but hey, I've never been in the military. Spirit shows himself, his handshake passive-aggressively rejected by Flint as introductions are made. After reiterating how the freaking new guys were completing survival and recon training when they were put on this mission, and some snark is tossed around, Spirit says that Cobra has already made it to the crash site, so they have to move out cautiously and quietly.
Quiet, Pinky. Both because we have to be stealthy and because you're an idiot.
As they head out, Spirit seems to take the lead, offending Flint, but Snake Eyes, in 3 panels that need to be read from left to right and back to left, reminds him the mission comes first. They're spotted by some Cobra goons, and a firefight ensues, but the gunners are soon taken out, and an enemy chopper begins taking off with cloaked cargo. CoverGirl tries taking out the fangs, so I guess they want to risk blowing up whatever they're taking too, but they're bulletproof. Instead, Alpine gets the bright idea to launch a grapnel line. Bazooka thinks he's going to help, but given his oops, I'm guessing he didn't fire just the way he intended, and Alpine is none too happy. First he gazes down his own launcher, now this. In this universe, is Bazooka on the team because one of the top brass lost a bet? Barbecue is tasked with using his flamethrower on the chopper, with Barbecue on extinguisher duty so the forest doesn't go up like candles on Great-Grandma's birthday cake. And despite the lack of what I imagine should have been a big sound effect and the ground shaking, they find what Cobra was hiding. The Autobot blaster. Nobody touch anything. He might be a little burnt, but if he's in mint condition, do you know how much we could get for him on eBay, even out of box? Yeah, it looks like he landed on another bot, but I can't quite tell who. Hours later, all the Joes return to base, greeted by Shipwreck. He's quickly enamored by CoverGirl, who, if I recall accurately, he frequently hit on in the old cartoon, but Flint tells him he saw her first, and Ship's not her type. After all, when Bazooka called her pretty, she said, "Gag me." When I called her gorgeous, she just insulted the entire team's IQ, then kicked me in the crotch, and pushed me out of the helicopter twice. But I think I've got a shot. Spirit surprises his old sailor friend, and after another Village People joke, he and Flint have to go see Duke. Later, they're before a tribunal of retired Joes, Flint whispering a remark about oversized GoBots. Maybe in this continuity the Transformers influenced culture just enough so that they kind of inspired that show. I'm not saying it's accurate, but what based on a true story yarn doesn't have its embellishments? Duke is joined by Stalker and Scarlet, who, frankly, look good considering they're pushing, 70? The meeting also includes visual aids, so Flint can best prepare his team for the mission ahead. We see some dark, grainy footage of Optimus Prime fighting Megatron from the early 40s when the arms race against Cobra began, and if they're not careful, it could lead to another world war. But it was averted altogether because the publisher went under. So that was the first and only issue of Transformers G.I. Joe Divided Front, and if nothing else, it was a pretty good start to a follow-up that could have been more enjoyable than its predecessor. I do think it's interesting that their idea was to have the Joes start in the late 30s with some characters we're familiar with and continue on as the decades progress with other, maybe less showcased faces with perhaps a few legacy names passed on, like Flint, possibly Destro, and maybe Snake Eyes? Though it wouldn't shock me if it was supposed to be the same guy and he's as skilled as ever because ninja. Definitely the same Cobra Commander who's now sporting his helmet and chrome faceplate, with one word having that slight hiss of the S, indicating that he too has changed over time. However he survived. I was thinking the signal they were referring to was going to be revealed as the Matrix, but since it was destroyed, that just raises more questions. Maybe a new one was created on Cybertron when the first one broke, and Blaster and crew were hiding it from the Decepticons for some reason. Heck, it could have led to the introduction of Rodimus Prime. Or perhaps it was supposed to be an entirely new, different power source with a similar signature. Several elements at work here that would be fun to see expanded upon. Conceivably, it's always possible they could try and continue the story, unless there's a lot of legal blockades in the way. It can't happen with the revival of Dreamwave. Their assets were bought up with the intention of doing something with them in 2005. Any day now. Well, it's nice to see some of the classic Joe designs. Flint seems to be way too much of a jackwagon for my liking, berating his troops, clear anger issues, and trust me, I know, and obviously living in his dad's shadow. Some of the Joes seem to know what they're doing, and then there's Bazooka, but Flint Jr. seems burdened with personal issues. Not that such a trait can't make for an intriguing character, but there hasn't been enough of a balance shown for obvious reasons. We don't really have much of a reason to like this guy. Some of the covers could be viewed as a bit misleading, since it clearly showed the 80s Joes, including ones that would have aged out of their roles in the story. And since I admit I am fairly shallow, I have to deduct points for either lack of either still hot Lady J or an equally or more attractive descendant of the same code name. I do prefer the art in this book compared to the previous crossover, helped because here, the characters and their environments are clear and distinct, not melting together between the shadows and amorphous backgrounds. It may not look as gritty or dirty as before, but graphically, It shows it has something going for it beyond nostalgia. Though it isn't quite as clean, as you might say, as the Image Comics and Devil's Due crossovers we first looked at a few years ago. There were a couple of cases, like with its predecessor, stuff seeming to instantly happen in between panels, but it wasn't nearly as bad here. This could have been one of those cases where the sequel did better than the story that came before, though I'll admit it's not easy to gauge from this issue alone if it would have lived up to that potential, unless there's a very large and very silent contingent of fans that are just dragging their feet on campaigning for the rest of the story. I don't think we're going to get resolution anytime soon. I'm the Angry Spork, and man, have I got issues.